Hey there guys, Next Striker here back again for another video, and today I wanted to make a video on Batman Arkham Knight. Now this video game is something that I used to cover on my channel quite a while ago, back when all the DLC and everything was coming out on the game, and naturally now that it's been out for so long, no one really makes videos on it. But I recently looked back, played it again, and I wanted to give my retrospective on Batman Arkham Knight, my thoughts on it, how it's held up, etc, etc. So Batman Arkham Knight, just to kind of paint the picture, was the third and final entry in the Batman Arkham trilogy. Yes, Batman Arkham Origins exists, but it's really outside of the Rocksteady trilogy, and you can pretty much ignore it for the most part. You don't really need to even play it. The Batman Arkham games that are essential to me is Asylum, City, and Night. Origins is just a little, kind of a fun spin-off thing, you know, some people like it, some people don't. Personally, I didn't enjoy it, but whatever. Batman Arkham Knight was technically the fourth Arkham game, but the third Arkham game by Rocksteady. Now, Rocksteady made history, really, by making the very first good Batman game in such a long time with Batman Arkham Asylum, broke everyone's expectations, and really set the standard for not just Batman, but for superhero games in general. Batman Arkham Asylum was an amazing game, and Batman Arkham City took what Asylum did and ramped it up times 100 and made an even better video game and Batman game. And quite frankly, Batman Arkham City is one of my favorite video games of all time, just because of how perfect it is as a game and as a nod to Batman in general. It really takes the lore of Batman and celebrates it with amazing gameplay, story, graphics, etc. So when Batman Arkham Knight was announced to be the last game in the trilogy, everyone was super pumped for this game. This game had so much hype, it was unbelievable. And quite frankly, Rocksteady had a ton to live up to, which they themselves can thank for themselves, you know, because they set the standard. And so they kind of have to live up to themselves. And given how amazing Arkham City was, Arkham Knight, oof, man, it had a tall order to live up to. Did it live up to it? I think for the most part it did, but then there were also some things that it struggled with. The gameplay was, well, really the big premise of Batman Arkham Knight was to be the Batman. And yes, you are the Batman. I know this game really does get a lot of flack from some people because of certain aspects, and we're going to get into that, but if you really think about it, Batman Arkham Knight did let you be the Batman. You got to drive the Batmobile, you got to go through Gotham City, you got to stop crimes, you got to do all these different things that Batman would do in Arkham City, Gotham City is what I mean to say. But you got to do everything Batman would do, that's the point. And really the only thing you didn't get to do was go in the Batcave. But, you know, there was Wayne Tower, which you got to go in and do all of your techno stuff. You had Oracle, you had Alfred, all that stuff, right? The only thing you really didn't get to do was, you know, go in Wayne Manor, go in the Batcave. That was really about the only thing that was missing out in this game, which wasn't really necessary given the game structure, but it would have been a cool thing to see. And the Batmobile. A lot of people complained about the Batmobile, but what you have to remember is that a lot of people wanted the Batmobile to be driven or drivable since Arkham Asylum. So this is a fan request that finally got delivered on, and the Batmobile controls really well. Of course, the thing people really didn't like was the tank battle simulation stuff. I understand why people didn't really like that, but it is another gameplay mechanic. It played fine. I think the problem with Arkham Knight was that it focused too heavily on the tank stuff and not enough on what made the game series so great in the first place. The narrative in the game overall was pretty good, though I will say that the story was not as good as Arkham City, though in other areas it really was dark, deep, and I mean it was a great story. I just think that if we're really comparing it to Arkham City, it's probably not as good, but it's still a pretty good story, which I hate to say. I mean, really, if you look at all three games, they're all different, but given the hype and all of the Easter eggs and stuff that was thrown into Arkham City, I think that Arkham Knight gets docked just a little bit because it didn't live up to those expectations, but that's more on the gameplay side than necessarily the story side. So let's get into the gameplay. The Predator stuff and the combat stuff is absolutely perfect for the most part. Yes, there's some glitches, but for the most part, they got patched, and the gameplay's great. They really added on to the gameplay to make it even better. The fear takedowns was a great step to add in. And really the only thing that lacked was the challenges, which were patched in, though the AR challenges were not as enticing as Arkham City's. I think in Arkham City they really made a lot of really cool maps and challenges, and I feel like the characters were better integrated, Nightwing, Robin, and Catwoman, as opposed to being almost more of an afterthought in this game, which they were because people wanted to play as them in the challenges and not have character-specific challenges, so... I don't know what they were really thinking with that. Obviously, the challenge maps, I think, are better than the AR challenges, but they did remove a lot of the techno stuff, and for the most part, they functioned fine, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that a lot of the maps based on the Arkham episodes were also really good. And the challenge maps are something that I sink a lot of time into. I did with Asylum, I did with City, and I did with Night, so I really enjoyed it. But the gameplay where it docks down, for some people was the tank battles, like I said. But to me, the biggest thing that really hurt this game was the boss battles. The boss battles, oof. Man, they really dropped the ball with the boss battles. That is an understatement to say something like that. Given how absolutely incredible the boss battles were in Arkham City, to go from that to Arkham Knight's boss battles, it's night and day, literally. I don't know what they were thinking, but to have most of the boss battles be tank battles, and then for all the encounters to really just be like a button press or whatever, it was dumb. Deathstroke was extremely disappointing. Hush was extremely disappointing. Scarecrow was extremely disappointing. Those are the big three that really stick out to me because we didn't really get a fight with them, unfortunately. It was really dumb. And Scarecrow, speaking of Scarecrow, do you guys remember how incredible the fear simulations were in Arkham Asylum where everything gets completely twisted around? Where was that in this game? We got stuff with the Joker, which is fine, but we didn't really get that one-on-one with Batman and Scarecrow. It was really just more of a standoffish plot thing, and not so much an actual encounter, which I think really does dock the game down. The boss battles were disappointing, and that's really the biggest complaint I have with this game. It just wasn't as good with the boss battles. However, I will say that the game did pack in a ton of content, okay? The game packed in a ton of content, and it had a lot of DLC. For the Season Pass, I can't remember how much it was. I want to say it was around $35–40 bucks. That was a lot of DLC we got. Now, I will say this though. Some of the DLC content was definitely disappointing and did not live up to the expectation. For example, the Arkham episodes, all those were way too short. I think instead of trying to pepper them out with all these Arkham episodes, that the DLC should have been more cohesive. For example, with the Batgirl DLC, while it did have some narrative problems and it didn't really make sense with the lore of Arkham, which is something that was a little bit of a problem with Arkham Knight, especially with their tie-in comics. But anyway, as far as in-game, Batgirl, the DLC, was a little bit contradictory based on the lore, but it was a standalone thing. It had its own story, it had its own free roam. That's how all the Arkham episodes should have been. So rather than trying to make 10–15 minute episodes for each character, I think they really should have just made one big story that happened at the end of Arkham Knight that had all the side characters and wrapped up the story really well. I feel like with the Arkham episodes, while they were cool and it was fun to play as all the characters, you didn't really get a ton of retrospect as to what happened after Batman quote-unquote died, which we all know he didn't die, but the characters think he died, right? I would have loved to see how they interacted, how they protected Gotham City after Batman's disappearance, and possibly have seen this fear-induced Batman at the end of the game. That would have been really cool. I would have really enjoyed that, but instead we got these little episodes. Yes, they were fun, but they really lacked substance, and while I do still like to replay them from time to time, especially Red Hood's, I found his one of the most fun of all of them, I still think there could have been more to it, and I would have really loved to see Red Hood interact with the rest of the cast. Another thing with the story, a lot of people complained that there were damsels in the game. For example, Oracle was a damsel, blah blah blah. I think that all the side characters, which I really love, were damsels, more or less. I think Robin actually probably got the best run-of-the-mill, and Nightwing. Those two they got fairly good stuff until the end, which of course, Nightwing was held hostage and Robin was held hostage. I feel like at this point in their careers, that wouldn't have happened to any of them. You know, Nightwing is pretty much an equal to Batman. Robin, in the Arkhamverse, he's somewhat inexperienced. I think he's been around for maybe 2 years, something like that. But I feel like Robin wouldn't have gotten in a predicament like that either. So, for me, that was something that kind of held it back. And also, speaking of Robin, as far as character designs go, I think Batman had a great character design and had great costumes. Catwoman, great character design, great costumes. Nightwing, great stuff. Red Hood, awesome design. Batgirl, awesome design. Azrael, cool design. What happened with Robin's design? I mean, oh man, this guy, everyone's made fun of him. He looks like Eminem. The whole buzz hair thing, if they're going to do that, just put the hood on, man. I don't know why that wasn't an option, or at least give us the Arkham City costume. But man, all of his costumes had like terrible hair, like the hair looked fake, and then his actual costume, which I think the actual costume's cool, but then he looks stupid because he has his buzzed hair thing, and I feel like that gives away his identity, because if they know who Batman is, like, wouldn't it be super easy to see who Robin is? But anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. Robin looked dumb, which I still, it's hard for me to get over that because he was so cool in Arkham City. But anyway, for the most part, I know I've said a lot of negative things, but honestly, Batman Arkham Knight's still an excellent game. I do recommend you guys play it if you haven't played it already, and I think overall the Rocksteady Arkham trilogy is a super good video game series that really lives up to its expectations for the most part and exceeds them. And I do feel like it also sets the standards for superhero games in general. For the most part, I think that's all I had to say. Also, the graphics were incredible in this game, just throwing it out there. I don't think graphics make a game, but good grief, man. The graphics were incredible in this game, just throwing it out there. But anyway, that's all I had for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thumbs up if you like, subscribe if you liked, and I'll catch you guys later.